Welcome to day 9 of our 14-day journey of It's a Vagina monologue season at She Stands Tall project. Before I begin, I want to give a shout out and thank all of you for watching. And yesterday there were so many comments, and sometimes when the monologues are going on, we don't get to read them. We don't get to bring them here into our conversation and to acknowledge you or respond to many of your sharings, but that you mention the sisters, what they speak, and you respond to it. It has been absolutely a delight to read it, and gratitude for your presence and for the time that you are spending with us every evening, 6:30 to 7:30. And today we have quite an intense piece. It is I think it's one of the most intense pieces. In every vagina monologues, there are one or two pieces which are really intense. And this one specifically is about war, rape, war, conflict zones, disasters, any of those areas and places of the war or conflict. It always comes on women's bodies. And this has been a very old strategy of psychological warfare, is by really hurting the so-called enemy, where it hurts, and it's there, the daughters and the mothers and the women and the women's vagina. And this has happened for as long as I think humanity has moved to grab land or be in conflict, as a collective force. War, rape has been one of the ways that pain is inflicted. And it's not just war, but rape has become such a prevalent part of the world culture today. According to UN, statistics, 1 out of 4 women have experienced rape or sexual abuse from a really close someone they trusted. And that means if you're in a room with 5 or 6 women, then statistics says that at least one of them. And in my experience, I have seen that it is way more than that. Many times many of our stories are not part of numbers and statistics. So this is something, there's so much work happening around it. There's so much voice, and yet you hear about rape every single day, especially in India. We hear it. I mean, I'm sure it's not especially, it's everywhere. And I hear here, and it has increased. It has become more, or maybe because we are now more aware, we are bringing it more, or we are hearing about it more. I don't know. But so today's piece is really want to talk about that. So it is also an intense piece. And this particular piece is about the Kosovo rape camps that existed during the war. And so I wanted to just take a moment, because often when I am in conversation with, in relationship, with friends or peers, or consent and permission around women's bodies is always, it feels like there is a lack of understanding around what consent is and what permission looks like. And I wanted to just take a moment before we go into the monologue to really uh, speak about that, to highlight that. And so I've just made few slides which I wanted to share with you. And just to, it may seem, for some of it might seem, oh, this is so obvious, but you would be surprised to know it is not so obvious to so many, especially men, and in many cases, women as well. Yeah, so I'm going to share these slides just so that we are clear. We have named it and you have seen it, yeah? Recognizing what consent and permission looks like. One of the most important, there are two words that we have as humanity. It can be, in every language, it can be slightly different word, but we have two words, yes and no, yeah? So these two are there. It's so clear. You would say, when you ask somebody, when they say yes, you know they're giving you permission, or when they say no, you know that they're not giving you permission. But sometimes we don't understand that. So my very first is verbal no. When a woman says no verbally, it is enough. She doesn't need to say anything more. This is also, so since I'm saying women, it just means anybody. Even a child, when a child says no, then next it's a dialogue. It is not a domination or a power over or shutting that person, but then the only movement is maybe a dialogue if there is safety. But again, if it's no, then it's a no. No in itself is a full and complete sentence. It doesn't need any add-on, any frills. It needs nothing. Yeah. So then there is verbal no. And many times you're not able to say a verbal no. If I look at myself, I have a very early childhood, a way early experience of abuse, sexual abuse, and from someone, family, you know. So, and one of the, I didn't know that. This is just in the, this is just work, somatic sense I have. But so whenever someone I trust crosses the boundary, even at least a decade ago, what would happen to me was a freeze. I would just freeze, literal freeze, like my hands stiffen, everything stiffen, my throat stiffens, and I just go into survival mode. So, but then the other person, many times I've seen that, even my own partner, could never recognize that. So this is where I want to also talk about, which we don't talk about enough, is there is also a somatic no. So we really need, especially people, we really need to understand that there is a somatic no, and it can be felt, sensed, and seen in the other person. Yeah, and doesn't matter who it is, when they, if they're not able to say no, many would say, oh, but they never said anything at that time, but you could see if they are not interested, there is silence, there is exhaustion, they are, it's a power dynamics. You are in a position of authority. Then you have to make sure that you literally hear a yes from the other person, and that they are, and they show it, and that how there is connection and there is yes. So when there is no eye contact, when the body is tense and stiff, and if as a man you're not able to recognize that, then I really invite, men to start becoming present to this, yeah, and resistance. So I think it's high time that we really start looking at relationship and these gateways where women's bodies and vaginas and penetration and all that is there. It's such a sacred space that we really need to start recognizing somatic no's. Yeah. And silence is not a yes. Yeah. I think it is so important that we can make sure that it is a yes, and silence is not permission granted. This is so important because especially that there is so much trauma that we all as women, that we are working with and we are agreeing to, we are becoming present to as part of our life, we need that space, safe space, to also be able to choose that yes and choose that no. So our silence might just be us even finding what's happening right now, emotionally, physically, to me, what's going on. For many of us, a trauma just gets alive, so just giving silence is not a yes. Silence means give some space, create safety, have patience, and asking permission. Many times I'm realizing that people don't understand what permission means. Asking permission in a sentence starts with, can I, may I, shall I, could you, would you, shall we, could we. So it starts with an ask. I mean, I know it's such basic elementary English, but please, and it's even in your own language, what is that? Or even if you say, I would love to make love to you. Shall we? Can we? What do you think? Is it okay? It can proceed with a question. Yeah. And sometimes it's not like always you have to ask, but you need to really have the gauge of the body and the movement towards away. Then you need to have the somatic sense. Yeah. And another thing is verbal permission. When you have verbal permission, of course, it needs to end in a question mark. Please, it needs to end. If it doesn't end in a question mark, it is a statement. It is not an ask. And I feel as women, we need to also take responsibility, start becoming present to this and to voice it. That, so even if it's just a statement, sometimes we don't know what to say. And sometimes it's people who we trust. And we don't know how the no enters. If someone asks, are you okay? When it's someone you trust, you don't know whether you say yes or you say no. So even what do we ask? Or I hope it's okay. Even that, someone can't answer to that. So the question when you ask, it cannot be a yes or no question. It has to have more room. Yeah. And so the person has room to express. And of course, permission needs to be followed by the space to respond with a yes or a no. That means it needs that. Yeah. And it's for both. It doesn't need to, it's not very specific to male or female, but since this work is about vagina monologues and women are the one who take in all the time, many times. So that's why this we are saying, but it applies in both ways. And of course, this is another thing that relationship requires heartful, mindful, conscious work. Relationship is not a compromise. And I'm saying this because I often hear this told to me, but marriage is a compromise. Don't choose a marriage. That means there is some aspects of it that you've given up and, said that, okay, these we can't, so we're just not going to look at it. That means the work, you have compromised on the depth of your intimacy. Marriage or relationship is not a compromise. It is of being, it's about connection, and connection is not a compromise, because compromise means there is no safety. You've already compromised, means you have let go of safety, and then there is no connection. So again and again, the safety, connection, safety, these two aspects keep coming. And there are so many, so this is something that I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I still hear this when a woman comes after 10 years and she speaks about it. People say, why didn't she say this before? If you, and it would be if she wouldn't voice it verbally, it is definitely there in her body. And I think it's time that we all start becoming more and more tuned into our bodies. So this is something that I wanted to bring. I hope it was useful, valuable. And so, yeah. And we are talking about war rape, where women's yes and no really doesn't matter. Yeah. And it's happening at a much different level. It is already happening at a collective level of, not already the no's have been ignored. And I am saying this also because right now as a world, we have all this war, so many places of our earth are in conflict, and to know that wherever there is conflict, it does come to women's bodies as well, and children. Women and children, I feel, are the biggest casualties, but not so much spoken about. So, and today's piece, I want to read the introduction of this piece as Eve Ensler introduces it. In 1993, I was walking down a street in Manhattan when I passed a newsstand and was suddenly struck by a deeply disturbing photograph on the front page of Newsday. It was a picture of a group of 6 young women who had just been returned from a rape camp in Bosnia. Their faces revealed shock and despair. But more disturbing was a sense that something sweet, something pure had been forever destroyed in each of their lives. I read on. Inside the newspaper was another photograph of the young women, recently reunited with their mothers and standing in a semicircle in a gymnasium. There was a very large group, and not one of them, mother or daughter, was able to look at the camera. I knew I had to go there. I had to meet these women. In 1994, thanks to the support of an angel, Lauren Lloyd, I spent 2 months in Croatia and Pakistan interviewing Bosnian women refugees. I interviewed these women and hung out with them in camps, cafes, and refugee centers. I have been back to Bosnia twice since then. When I returned to New York after my first trip, I was in a state of outrage. Outraged that 20,000 to 70,000 women were being raped in the middle of Europe in 1993 as a systemic tactic of war, and no one was doing anything to stop it. I couldn't understand it. A friend asked me why I was surprised. She said that over 500,000 women were raped every year in the United States of America. And in theory, we were not even at war. This monologue is based on one woman's story. I want to thank her here for sharing it with me. I am in awe of her spirit and strength, as I am in awe of every woman I met who survived these terrible atrocities in the former Yugoslavia. This piece is for the women of Bosnia. My vagina was my village.
My vagina was green, what a soft pink fields, cow moving, sun resting, sweet boyfriend touching lightly with soft piece of blonde straw.
There is something between my legs. I do not know what it is. I do not know where it is. I do not touch. Not now. Not anymore. Not since.
My vagina was chatty, can't wait. So much, saying words, talking. Can't quit trying, can't quit saying, oh yes, oh yes.
Not since I dreamed there's a dead animal sewn in down there with thick black fishing line. And the dead, bad dead animal smell cannot be removed. And its throat is slit and it bleeds through all my summer dresses.
My vagina singing all girl songs, all goat bell ringing songs, all wild autumn songs, vagina songs, vagina home songs.
Not since the soldiers put a long, thick rifle inside me. So cold, the steel rod canceling my heart. Don't know whether they are going to fire it or shove it through my spinning brain. 6 of them, monstrous doctors with black masks shoving bottles up me. There were sticks in the end of a broom.
My vagina swimming river water, clean spilling water over sun-baked stones, over stone clit stones, over and over.
Not since I heard the skin tear and made lemon screeching sounds. Not since a piece of my vagina came off in my hand, a part of the lip. Now one side of the lip is completely gone.
My vagina, a live, wet water village. My vagina, my hometown.
Not since they took turns for 7 days, smelling like feces and smoked meat. They left their dirty sperm inside me. I became a river of poison and pus, and all the crops died and the fish.
My vagina, a live, wet water village.
They butchered it, burnt it down, invaded it. I do not touch now, do not visit. I live someplace else, do not know where that is.
Just want to take a moment before I bring back the sisters who read the piece. And I invite you as well. I'm going to invite Mudita first. Mudita is a free-spirited being and is constantly breaking the cages of good, bad, right, wrong. Welcome, Mudita. And I invite Ramya. This is a first reading in the Vagina Monologues. Welcome, Ramya. And Ramya is reclaiming the wetness of her yoni as she steps into her softness, her strength, and her badassity. Welcome, Ramya. Yeah. Today we're going to, I just want to do a check-in with both of you as to how it's quite a intense piece, and how are you doing? How was it to, when you received the piece and going through it? And
Every time I read the piece, I could actually feel the shock in my body as I read the words, and even something that was not said as well. It's a lot of deep anguish, deep pain, trauma, anger. And this is our everyday reality, isn't it?
yeah.
This was not something that happened once upon a time.
Yeah.
It's happening right now as we speak. That is what is making it all the more difficult for me to even articulate what I'm trying to say, because women, children, even men across the world are going through this right now. And yeah, it's yeah.
Thank you, Ramya.
I think reading this piece was extremely difficult. I was sharing this before also, that just imagining the before and after, like this piece brings together the before and after so beautifully. And I think just imagining, and while I was reading this, all that I could see is like a beautiful bud of a flower, and how somebody would just walk over it, like, so it's like the story of that flower before and after, then how beautiful and happy I was. And then now I don't even want to know who I am. So it's just so heartbreaking. And yeah, the thought that crosses my mind is that what actually goes through the person who's walked over like this and scarred for life. And can there be any kind of anything that can bring back that innocence? I don't know.
Is there something that can bring back that life?
I think just from moving from survival, thrival, it must, it's every moment, every day journey for any woman who has gone through a rape or a sexual abuse. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it is. And to still come back to feeling and living your everyday, to be vulnerable, because those are all gateways that open up the old pain.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I want to name it also because I am an army kid. My dad was in the 1971 and 72 war. And I see the trauma. That he never likes. What he talks about has nothing to do with war. He talk about random things, and he never liked the war. And so I also want to also name sons and brothers and lovers and husbands and fathers who go to war and who come back as not whole.
Yeah.
They come back hollow or empty or broken and of things that they can never speak about or what they did. So it's like these two halves of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. Like in this case, if we are talking about war crimes, we're just left with a broken society.
yeah,
where everybody is in deep pain, deep trauma. The men who went out to war and women and children who stayed back.
yeah.
Everybody is going through deep trauma, and not just them. I think it is transgenerational, isn't it? So that entire society is scarred for God knows how many how many generations, and how many lives have been affected by that. And it takes me back to yesterday's discussion where, land and women.
Yeah.
Isn't war all about land? Isn't
all about? We have the great.
It is all about
the great Mahabharata, which is all about 1 inch of small inch, the millions of people who were killed.
Yeah.
In the land.
That 1 inch of land we are ready to kill, butcher, invade. So lives. Yeah.
When is it going to be enough? When is it going to be enough?
I don't think there is ever going to be an end to, when will your desire for more end?
The thought that also comes to me is while we're talking of, be it a war which is actually happening there for use of land or whatever reasons, or even be it a war in today's day-to-day living where you go to work and that's a war. For be it a man or a woman, that boss could be the person you're fighting, that colleague could be the person you're fighting to find that position in that company is the war you're fighting, to climb the ladder, whatever. And then, so there is some kind of a trauma that hits you, right? And then one of the definitions of trauma is that a part of your spirit is taken away from you. So the thought that comes to me is that part of the innocence is taken away, a part of me is taken away, and that's when I am not whole. And is that the reason then I pass on the pain to somebody else? Is that the reason that I punish somebody else for what's happened to me and take away their part as well? So when is this chain? I mean, how does this chain end then? I am hurt, I ever hurt somebody else, and that person hurts somebody else, and I don't know. Is there an end to this?
I think I don't know about the end, but I think the only movement that can bring some solution is if we start looking at our own self and own our pain. I think that we all have pain, and I feel everything has, even religion and God. And as I go deeper, I realize it has all come as this external thing has come out of, I can't hold this pain, so I hold you. So all these we have created to hold, to not feel this pain. So we keep looking outwards to hold things, to not feel this pain. And then that is what we are protecting. That thing that we are so focused outside, but that is the pain is still there, you know. And if I just, even in India, I mean, we it's not just when the Mughals came that our pain started, you know. It's not somebody, even before that, when I read about Ashoka, we were a land of war. I mean, it was a war from when? So how long? I think 4,000, 5,000, we were in war. Like if you go to Mahabharata, if you look at Ramayana, like if I'm just bringing our own texts, from the day one to the end, there is just war and killing and fighting. Nobody is happy. I don't see people in, you know, intimacy and love and, you know, in connection. It's everybody is in misery and suffering and pain. This is like such an old text. So in a way that, you know, and we are still glorifying it. We are still using that to, you know, and so seeing that, whoa, everybody is pained here. So that is reality. We need to start looking at the pain, but then we use something else. It's just, for me, I think that's what I have been kind of, for me, which I never thought ever is possible for me, that, you know, because some of the pain that I feel even I have is, it's almost equal to death, you know, because, and some of those doorways I don't want to revisit, you know. And I think everyone has that. So it's also becomes about what is the kind of safety as a society we create, instead of focusing on war and you being the problem in every country. How do we also, while we have to protect, say, we have to protect our borders, because we are all learning the enemy. Who is the enemy? The enemy is he. I am my enemy. There's no other enemy, but we don't know that. Right? So while we are working that out in everyone in our own country, we also need to create spaces where we can really start exploring this. I don't know when that is going to happen. When trauma, like you said, no trauma, this part, did I really lose it? Or it is just the old pain which is still here? There is really, in the sense of energy, there's nothing really lost. So can I be seen? Can I be met in my pain? And how do I learn as an adult to hold my pain? And that's why I thought even today, you know, because what comes first, I remember reading this, was anger. It's so much anger. And I'm learning more and more that anger is a defense against pain. It is such a defense. Unless there is a real danger, then my anger will protect me. But right now, knowing this, my anger is not doing anything to me. It is just taking my energy. But what I feel is sadness, is that, and that I want to feel. And yeah, so, you know, so I feel like really ocean of tears have to be shed in collective communities and places. We have to allow people to feel sad and to cry. Otherwise, we'll be flooded and nature is going to cry and do it anyway, like she's doing it. Because we are not shedding our tears enough. I mean, that's what, I don't know how, I don't know, you know, I only know what, like we as us gathering here every day.
Yeah.
And you know, I would like to hope that it is, we're doing something here, you know, when we come and be vulnerable, and when we do these pieces and Vagina monologue itself. I mean, for many I saw today who are watching, I'm sure this is so new for them. I saw some names that I know. And I think it's that it needs to hit us, you know.
Yeah.
Numbness. A numbness needs to melt.
I think it's only if we are present to the truth of our trauma,
Yeah.
can we even start addressing it? Can we even start? I don't even have to talk about my trauma. Just being aware that I have the trauma is enough for me to just hold the container for just maybe another person. That recognition is missing most of the time. The acceptance that I have trauma is missing most of the time. And it's not just in women, it's in men. It's like Mudita said, our everyday life is a struggle.
Yeah.
Just going out in public transport, coming back home, it's a struggle. Stepping out, going to a crowded place is a struggle.
Definitely.
So just coming back to my truth and saying, yes, I have this, and we talk about it. Can we recognize it? And then can we, I wouldn't maybe say reconcile, but just address it.
Yeah. And also I can see, go ahead. No, go ahead, Ramya.
No, I was just saying it's like the elephant in the room, you know. All of us, like you said, it's a very scary statistic there. Almost all of us have gone through that, but talk about it in our families. We don't talk about, even in deep, close friendships.
Yeah.
It's not spoken about. It's only when it's so apparent that it can't be hidden.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about it. But generally, how many, I don't think many of my very close friends know about such traumas that I've gone through.
Yeah.
Because that space was never created where I could speak about it. Right?
Right. So you're bringing it back to safety.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's extremely important that safety is consciously created in every relationship, in every space.
Work, school, everything.
Absolutely. And we have to talk about it.
Yeah, news channels. It has to be conscious movement, you know. I think the next decade, I wish that trauma really becomes the center of conversation, of policy making, you know, and I know that it's beginning to happen very much slowly. Still, I hear the struggle that many of the researchers are facing in the US, which is, I feel like, much more progressive. So, I mean, we still have some time there. Yeah. But I think we can start talking about it. And we are all, I think all of, you know, this work is about that as well, to create those safe spaces that even if we don't talk about it, someone knows that I can show my pain and I can learn to take care of myself as an adult and my pain. You know, as an adult, I mean, you can. And the thing is, our nervous system, it's built into a nervous system. Homeostasis is a very natural quality. And how do I, and only in safety we can really start allowing that to come back into its rhythm. So how do we create those relational safe spaces that we mirror that, you know, for each other, and we feel safe and we can voice, or we can just cry. We don't even need to tell. It's not about the story and nothing. Just about lightening. It's just letting go. This holding is tiring me. I am tired of being defensive. It's enough.
Yeah.
Enough. You know, I am tired and I am ready to put it all down. Yeah. And yeah. Shall we do the prayer that we were planning to?
Definitely. Yeah.
Because that's what I thought today, that it's a prayer is just nothing. I mean, you know, nothing elaborate. I just want to read a beautiful invocation and a prayer that I have. So I just want to share that I just have these candles here and some sacred things that I use in my constellation work. So I have that here. And there are some images. This, what I have here has images of indigenous art and blessings. And I have placed the candles, it's just me, I've placed the candles for all the directions and the center. Yeah. So all the world, everyone. Yeah. And I'm just going to take a moment to light the candles. Start with the east. South. West. And the north. And one for the center. And this for me is my own. Each one of us also has a center core. Yeah. So that, and just as we sit, becoming present, becoming aware, giving space, allowing, agreeing to who we are, our life, our ancestors, the line that we are sitting. So I'm just not me here sitting, I'm sitting here in my system. And I'm sitting with you, honoring your system, agreeing to the stories, the lives, and the fate of our systems, and we in our system. Agreeing to the fate of the sisters all over the world, humanity as we are in this moment, the pain that we carry, that which we have moved through. We are here. And I want to read this poem, which is by Judy Grant, my teacher. And it is titled, May We Embrace. And when I say may we, I'm opening it out to just everything, all of humankind, all the species and the plants and the trees and, you know, all of life on earth. And if you have rattles and bells and you can sound them, yeah, in between. Yeah. May we embrace Great Mother, Great Spirit, Great Mother, Father God. May we embrace those whose deity is a talkative stone, a sacred tree, or a reindeer. May we embrace those whose deity is a complex historic story of martyrdom, suffering, and redemption. May we embrace those whose deity is immanent in a dance of joy, in drum song, or a literate tattoo carved in flesh of sacred human body. Knowing yours is the greatest of all bodies, may we embrace. Great Spirit, Great Father, Mother God, Great Mother, may we embrace those whose deity is the keeping of just law. And may we embrace those whose deity is the breaking of unjust law. May we embrace those whose deity is a sexual thing, a sexual being, and those whose deity is a breath of sound, and those whose deity is a crafting, a talisman of jewels or a beautiful cloth, a painting in sand of our lives as paintings in the wind. Knowing yours is the gift of thoughtful action. Great Father, Mother, God, Great Spirit, great dancing Mother, may we embrace those whose deity drips gore in the eternal boneyard of the non-reality of any body. And may we embrace just sitting with all being, those whose deity is present in the tender kiss of the baby and the blessing of all relationships, knowing you are the red blood web holding our short lives on this long earth. Great Mother, Great Spirit, Great Father, Mother, God, may we embrace our own hearts. May our hearts stretch large as wombs, as consciousness, as rivers of life. You of the nebulae and the black holes, you of the microbes and spinning cells, you of the shimmering cosmic delight. May our hearts stretch towards your heart, you of the largest heart. May we embrace, may our hearts stretch towards your heart, you of the largest heart. May we embrace. May we embrace. May we embrace who we are, who you are, who I am, who he is, who she is. May we embrace. May we embrace. Just holding, just holding the light. And maybe honor our tears, our pain. Shall we close for today? So, yeah, holding space and allowing space.
Yeah.